Hello and welcome to the Overland Journal podcast. I am your host, Scott Brady, and for this week's episode, Matt Scott and I talk about the American Expedition Vehicles Prospector. This vehicle is built on the Ram full-size chassis. It's built on their 2500 and 3500 trucks, and it is available in a standard Prospector on 37-inch tall tires, the much-envied Prospector XL, which is on 40-inch tires, and it has wider fender flares and some other accessories that allow for that kind of tire size fitment. We do a deep dive on this vehicle. The reason why we're covering this truck is because it is such a great fit to the overland traveler. It's available in a diesel drivetrain, a heavy-duty diesel drivetrain. It's available in a 3/4 ton and a 1 ton variant, which means that you can put pretty much as much weight as you would like on the thing with even over 3,000 pounds of payload. This is a very capable vehicle with a ton of capacity. It has the durability of the Cummins diesel, and then it has the legendary engineering and quality of American Expedition vehicles. So please enjoy our conversation about the amazing Prospector. This content is brought to you by Overland Journal, our premium quality print publication. The magazine was founded in 2006 with the goal of providing independent equipment and vehicle reviews, along with the most stunning adventures and photography. We care deeply about the countries and cultures we visit and share our experiences freely with our readers. We also have zero advertorial policy and do not accept any advertiser compensation for our reviews. By subscribing to Overland Journal, you're helping to support our employee-owned and veteran-owned publication. Your support also provides resources and funding for content like you are watching or listening to right now. You can subscribe directly on our website at overlandjournal.com.
So we're going to talk about the 2022 AEV Prospector XL today. Prospector.
I like it. Well, I mean, they're literally a super truck.
Yeah, they're kind of like an American Unimog.
They're like the super overlander truck. I've done trips all the way up to Tuktoyaktuk in Prospector XLs and Prospectors. And you've owned a Prospector, and it's a really important model. AEV does a lot of great work. Why don't you kind of give a background or a backstory on what the Prospector is?
Yeah, so the Prospector is basically like it's a conversion. It's a vehicle conversion, right? Like, I mean, technically speaking, there's really, if you go into a VIN search, there's no such thing as an AEV Prospector XL. It's a Ram 2500, 3500. I think they're starting to do some chassis cab stuff on like the 4500 and 5500.
Makes sense.
Long story short, so if you want one, you've got a few options. You can either send AEV, you buy the truck, you have the truck. I do think that if you buy your own truck and you have it converted, it has to have somewhat lowish miles. Like I don't think they convert stuff that has 40, 50,000 miles, although maybe they can. Or you just buy an AEV VINed truck. And I know that is a little bit of a redundant to what I just said, but there is actually like a little AEV VIN plate on it. So the whole thing with the Prospector, there's the Prospector, there's the Prospector XL. Prospector means 37s, XL means 40s. For the purposes of this conversation, when I say Prospector or PXL, we're talking about the one with 40s. So you start with what is a pretty good truck. I mean, it's basically kind of an uprated, Wrangler. When you look underneath of these things, you've got a 5-link in the rear. You do have a radius arm up front on them. They're really pretty capable trucks.
No question.
I think.
Yeah, no question.
Great driveline.
Great motors. I mean, everybody respects a Cummins diesel.
But AEV puts so much work into them. Like if you're going to go and you're going to build a full-size truck, this AEV Prospector sits in this kind of classy territory. So on the XL, I think the most distinguishing feature, aside from the 40-inch tires, are these big high mark fender flares that they do.
Yeah, which look factory and then totally complement the truck.
Yeah.
And they cover the tires.
Yeah, I've whacked them on some stuff. I want to say Dave said they're made from kind of like a kayak material. Like
makes sense.
They're really stout. So literally the fenders on the front and back of the vehicle end up getting cut. And there's like these new fender liners and these over fenders that go in, and you end up with this, I want to say they're 40 by 1350.
I think so. Yeah. They use a couple different manufacturers. I don't know what he's using currently.
I know that there's a problem getting 40-inch tires.
I know that he's also used the 41-inch IROX.
The Super Swampers, yeah.
Yeah, which they do look great on the vehicle. They're a little narrower.
Yeah.
The one, I had a Prospector XL for months. I think it was in 2019.
I remember that. Yeah.
2019 or 2018. I had a green one and it had Toyos on there. It was great.
Mine had the Toyos. I had no problem with those tires. For how I use the tire, or how I use the truck, I would have rather had an all-terrain tire, but it's just not available.
Right.
Like I think they use Toyos, I think they use Coopers, and then I think that you have an option to do the Super Swampers.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a call-in thing. Anyway, the whole purpose of this truck at the end of the day is to fit a really large tire with as minimal lift as possible. So you end up with a 3-inch lift on the front and about a 1 to 2 inch lift on the rear, depending on options and things like that. Like mine had air suspension, which was really cool. I don't think they have to lift those as much because if you put weight in the bed,
do they put a spacer?
Yeah, there's a
there?
spacer,
Nice.
and it's AEV, so it's super well engineered. There's a spacer. There's like some kind of extension to the height sensor.
Yeah. And they probably relocate the panhard rod and all those other things.
Yeah, everything's relocated. I want to say there's a different steering knuckle up front. It kind of gets a high steer. It gets hydraulic assist steering. The whole axle actually gets moved forward. Like I think it's 1.5 inches or 1.6
That makes sense.
inches or
so they can get the sweep of that huge tire and not hit the body.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So it's interesting. So I actually had a 2021 Ram 2500. If you remember the silver one, I left it stock. I was actually just intending to send it to AEV to get it converted. Well, this was peak pandemic and it was just an absolute nightmare. I ended up trading that for a TRX, and then I traded the TRX for the Prospector. Mm-hmm. So I've had like all of these interesting kind of Ram truck experiences, and I think that it's always fascinating to actually buying the vehicles yourself, and you're putting the money in yourself. I think you get a different perspective than that, and that's kind of what I want to dive into. Generally speaking, when you're buying an American car, the worst part of it is the dealer experience.
Yeah, always.
I went through Jackson Ellis in Glendale. They're a huge AEV dealer, and it was like super painless.
Which makes sense. I mean, that's a premium vehicle to a fairly affluent demographic. So they better like not screw you around.
Yeah.
It better be a pleasant experience.
So literally we're just going to start from the beginning on how to buy one, what it's like to buy one. This particular one was one that Jackson had spec'd, and it was already being shipped in. I think maybe somebody had dropped out from it. He knew I was kind of looking for one, called me, bought it, did the deal. It was super easy.
And it was in matte black too.
Black, not matte black.
Matte black.
Yeah, it was Matt's black.
Exactly.
Yeah. This particular truck was a limited Longhorn. That got you, I want to say the Longhorn package kind of used to be on the Laramie side. Now it's on the limited side. So it gets some nicer headlights that kind of swivel, automatic high beams, and it was a really beautifully spec'd truck. The reason I typically don't like the limited Longhorns is they get like this chrome front grille. But on this particular one, I don't know if it ended up being Jackson that swapped out the parts or AEV that painted them. All of that was gone, and it was black. So it was kind of a unique truck.
It looked really handsome. It looks a lot like that TRX that I'm driving today, which is like all like very tastefully blacked out.
Yeah. Well, it's actually funny. Like the TRX and the PXL are very similar vehicles. Like the price points are pretty similar, but they're about on opposite sides of the spectrum as you could get
for use case.
They're
both amazing, but totally different.
The PXL, depending on how you spec it, mine had the air suspension. It was a 2500.
I'm a fan of the air suspension.
I wouldn't get it again.
Oh, you wouldn't? What didn't you like about it?
It didn't have much travel.
Oh, that's interesting.
It ended up just running through its travel really, really quickly.
On compression.
Yeah. So when you got into corrugations or something off road, the back of the truck really bounced. I'm not gonna.
So you were getting a lot of step out in corrugations and stuff, where it's chattering and stepping out.
Yeah, it chattered a little bit. I mean, I would probably.
You did go from a TRX to a Prospector, so it's for those that are listening. But how much travel is on the TRX? 15 inches or something like that.
I think it's like 12.
Okay.
The TRX does not have as much travel as the Raptor.
Got it.
To be fair, the TRX could blow through its travel pretty quick too.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
700 horsepower, and anyway, so you have these two trucks that are like these two kind of eccentric luxury trucks,
super trucks,
and and one's incredibly fast. One is just ridiculous. I mean, you look at a Prospector XL, they just look gnarly. I mean, the new AEV bumper for the Rams, is so cool. The way the factory lights integrate. So new trucks have like these 360 cameras, and they even like have a camera relocation kit for it. It brings it from the grill to the bumper, and it doesn't affect with the optics or really distort it. They put a lot of work into it. It was really cool, and I think that's what really dominates the Prospector is the attention to detail that you cannot get by having a truck built by your local four-wheel drive shop. I mean, no disrespect, but they're coming up with individual solutions, and that's fine. Where
this is fully integrated system.
AEV is integrating systems and engineering a production solution for
an OEM level quality solution.
Yeah. So, mine was an early 22 car. So it didn't come with the 8100 XP, remote reservoir shocks. And the cool thing on those is the same guy that did the shock tuning for the TRX did the shock tuning for AEV on those Bilstein shocks, which was a little interesting tidbit that was kind of dropped to me. So I actually, after the fact, upgraded to those, and I upgraded to the brush guard.
I like that brush guard.
The brush guard made it for me.
Well, it's just animal strikes. You've got this incredibly expensive truck.
Yeah.
And you live in Prescott, where, the only time I've ever hit an animal was in Prescott. And, there's deer everywhere on Williamson Valley where we both live. Yeah. It's like, I just have to go further through the gauntlet than you do. But
my favorite part of that vehicle was the bumper and the brush guard and the integration that went into everything on that. Mm-hmm. The rear bumper was great. You just don't look at it as much, so you don't get as infatuated with it. But every detail on the vehicle was really good.
And I think that's another thing that's worth noting is that when AEV designs something, they're looking at it at the highest level of quality and integration possible, but they're also really thoughtful designers.
Yeah.
So nothing looks out of place.
No, it just looks so beefy and good.
Most aftermarket components, they kind of look like they're screaming on the truck. Whereas the reason why you don't really pay that much attention to the rear bumper is because it just looks like a heavy duty factory option.
Yeah. They're like you said, there's actual automotive designers that are working there.
Yeah.
There's actual automotive engineers that are working there. And it's not
most of them, I believe.
Most of them. Yeah. It's not the cardboard aided design thing that you get with a lot of, I'm not saying that there aren't other strong bumpers on the market that can take an impact or whatever. That's not what I'm implying. But when you look at the AEV bumper and you understand what the stamping is and, these thoughtful little details, like on the front recovery points, they're what I presume is like a nodular iron or something. There's even like a little skid plate built in that if you ran out of approach angle, you could just push through it on these little kind of little nodular skids that are built into your
cast iron skid plates.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Nodular iron skid plates. And then the AEV bumpers are some of the few in the aftermarket period that are stamped. And the complexity of their stampings and the way that they integrate the level of quality material, coatings, finishes, it's all at OEM level or better. Yeah. Which is what means that like 10 years out, your aftermarket bumper is still going to look great.
Yeah. Let's talk about what it's like to drive a PXL.
And maybe also like use case. So since Overlanders are listening, how would someone use a Prospector? Like What would be the reason to buy a Prospector for overlanding in your mind? I mean, I've got some.
I think it's a bit of flash, a bit of flair, a bit of like it's a flashy car. Like it's on 40s and it is expensive. It looks expensive, but it looks like this factory thing. What is the use case? The use case is putting a camper in the back or a scenario where you need really high flotation because you're gonna air down to 20 psi in a 40 in a truck like that, and you're just gonna float over snow and mud and that kind of stuff. I think if I was an overlander, I would not have spec'd mine the way I did. Mine admittedly was was towing a race trailer. That was kind of my thing. I needed to put dirt bikes in the back of it. It was never really a primary overlander for me. I looked at the Prospector in my case as a toy. It's not a toy though. It's a truck that's really made for work. I mean, you could use this on a job site. You could use this in the field, for commercial work.
And that's one of the things that's interesting about the Prospector XL to me is that it is available from everything from what you bought, which is like this amazing do it all daily driver, tow the trailer, all that stuff. But then they also sell Prospector XLs that are regular cab with a tray bed that you install a camper on, and you literally have an American Unimog. Yeah. And they look great.
Super cool.
If you look up, for those that are listening, just look up a Prospector XL tray bed. To me, there is, and I'm going to come out here and say it right now, there is not a single vehicle that I have lusted over more for a longer period of time than that truck. Period. When I drove the white one, I mean, Dave Harriton had a manual transmission. And Mario Donovan has it now at AT Overland. And I drove that truck with Dave up to Tuktoyaktuk, and I drove the other ones as well, the 4 doors and the ones that are more spec like your vehicle. But that one with a manual transmission on 41s with a tray, it was like if there was ever a Scotty Mobile. I don't know why I've not just bought what I really want, but that is the truck that I really want.
I think that they're the coolest because they're the least practical. I think whenever you add practicality to something, it becomes less inherently cool.
So true. And I don't need a 4-door. I don't have kids. So, it'd be me and then a camper on the back and, whatever.
I think the thing with the Prospector XL is that you look at it and it looks very professionally done. I mean, everything's proper. They have their own badging that looks great, but it drives really good too.
It's shocking. That's another thing that people that are listening, it's shocking to be in a truck on 40s, set the cruise at 85, and you're literally going down the road with one hand gently on the wheel.
Like I've owned it's not the exact same truck, but I had this 21 2500 and I had the 22 2500. Obviously there's little changes here and there, but same drivetrain, same transmission, same gearing, same everything. The Prospector was easier to drive. It rode better. It was better on the road.
Oh, that's interesting. That is
here's
quite the comment.
The crazy thing is that I do think that the Prospector's biggest weakness right now is that it does need gearing. But like with the stock 21, it was geared so low. I think they have 373s, which isn't like so low. Well, but with the amount of torque that it makes, you couldn't act like when we're pulling out of the office over here by the corner and you need to like kind of get on it to go whatever. If there's like any kind of moisture or any kind of sand or anything, you're not going anywhere.
Sure.
Where with the Prospector, like it almost kind of geared it down a little bit and it was just really easy to drive.
Sure.
Something about
So you do think that the Prospector needs lower gearing, or you don't? Just to clarify.
I do, but I don't think it's essential, but I think it at the end of the day would be better. I know that I'm
10% lower. Or something.
I think like a 456 would be perfect in that truck, but no one makes gearing for the Rams right now. They have some kind of,
there's a thing.
There's a thing like the carrier's integrated into the ring a little bit, and like I don't think anybody's tooling anything up right now, and I think that automotive production is screwed in the aftermarket, so nothing.
But I can't believe that they don't have 410s available.
It was a little, I'm not going to say frustrating, but like in previous time they have put 456s in the PXLs. Sure. That was just part of the option. They can't do that right now because nobody makes the gears.
That's good to know, though.
It
because we have to be able to talk about the things that aren't perfect.
Yeah. That's
there's so much about the truck that's perfect.
That's one of the things that isn't perfect. You also when I say it's easier to drive, I mean, it's easier to drive when you're in the middle of Texas and there's no cars around you. There is no way to get around that it is a big truck.
It's gigantic.
It's gigantic. It's honestly not that much wider than a TRX, but it drives.
The TRX is wide.
The TRX is wide, right?
When you look at a Prospector in a photograph, it looks so perfect.
Yeah.
Like the dimensions, the tire size, just so that everyone that's listening when you walk up to one of these things, it is gigantic.
It's big.
It's gigantic.
Yeah.
Like in a photograph, it looks so balanced and perfect and at home in the terrain and everything, but your truck was gigantic.
So yeah, let's be balanced here and talk about why I sold it. I wanted something smaller.
Yeah.
To be honest, I wanted to downsize a little bit. It was, I have people know I have a greyhound. I'm a doting greyhound
father,
rescue dad.
Yes.
And I have to lift this 80-pound dog into a truck on 40s. And it's just like, you're like hurling him up in there.
Yeah, sure.
So that's a me problem. Like you're buying a large truck. You look at it, it's large.
Yeah. It's big.
It's not a fault of the vehicle or anything. It's a personal preference.
But it's something to be aware of.
Yeah. I got it with the steps that automatically come out. I did them.
I like that.
I did them from the factory because then they're just a little bit more integrated in the screen and stuff.
I really like those
that
steps.
made it livable. Yeah. If those steps weren't there, I think that'd be a no-go for me. Like if I was to ever buy another one, which
and you're 6'1". So put that into perspective.
Yeah. That's kind of one of the downsides I think of it is just it. You have to walk into it knowing that you're buying a big truck. Where that affected me was that I didn't like to drive it off road. It was black. It was really pretty. It wasn't my primary off-road vehicle. Mm-hmm. And you're going to pinstripe it and you have to just be careful.
Another reason for the white
or you just PPF it.
Regular cab tray bed.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
For me, when I look at that, it's got the biggest challenge that we have as overlanders is payload.
Yeah.
There's lots of things to love about mid-sized trucks.
Yep.
But none of them have a 1-ton capacity anymore. You used to be able to buy mid-sized trucks or compact trucks with 1-ton ratings, but the most I've seen is a Ranger at like 1,600 pounds, or maybe a Gladiator at 1,700 pounds, but they're the same.
AEV's like real deal. So they replace the tire placards on the vehicle. They replace the gross vehicle weight labels, and all of the stuff gets replaced as like a secondary manufacturer. I don't know the exact term, but they weigh the vehicles and they take into account the weight of the accessories that's in them.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of explain this. I get payloads of conversation around the campfire with overlanders, and let's take the Ranger, 1,600 pound or 1,700 pound payload. Great. To the guy around the campfire, his truck still has a 1,700 pound payload. No, well, after you put the bumper and the tires and the wheels and the this and that, and
it all reduces it.
You really have a 800 pound payload or something like that, and then you go from there. So the stated payload on my Prospector was somewhere between 1,600 and 1,700 pounds, which really isn't that much for a full-size truck with that big of a diesel engine and whatever. So,
that's after all of the modifications.
That is the actual payload capacity stated by AEV. Now, it's a really simple solution. You buy the 35.
Exactly. You just go to the next bigger truck.
My next truck, honestly, like maybe it's an interesting story at the end why I got rid of this. Maybe I would consider another PXL, even though it's big and I get fatigued on that. I would do a 3500. There's people that actually prefer how the suspension works on there. It's a more traditional leaf sprung system versus a coil sprung system. But if you look at how Ram does the coil springs on the 2500s, they're very inboard and they're very susceptible to the crown of the road. So the car can kind of drive a little weird. I don't think it's as bad with the air suspension on there because I think it's a little bit more giving and it kind of adjusts a little bit. But I would get a 3500. I would also get a 3500 if I ordered them because I could do the high output motor. So let's talk about some other things that aren't great about the Prospector. Most of that is going to be RAM. The engine's outdated. The transmission comes from the 90s. To be really blunt, the 645 RFE or something, it's an old transmission. It's a 6-speed. It's not particularly refined. And you get into every other competitive product that you're looking at, TRX, 8-speed, 8 HP ZF transmission, fantastic. You get into the Super Duties and the Chevys, 10 speeds.
They're insane.
And they're really good.
So good.
Like the Earth Roamer has a 6-speed from the Ford. That's a 2011. That transmission is so much better than the one that's in a 22 or 23 Ram. The Ison that you get with the high output motor is even rougher. And I don't know if it's just me, but I keep hearing of people that are having problems with that Ison, even though it's meant to be the heavy duty transmission. Other problems with it is you look at a Tremor, which is realistically its most, there's the Power Wagon, there's the Rebel, now there's the AEV Silverado HD, and
which is a great looking truck.
Awesome. But you look at all the competition and you're looking at Ford with 1,200 pound-feet of torque, and you're looking at a 10-speed and 500 plus horsepower, and then you're looking.
I remember when I drove the Tremor, you literally felt like you were turning the tires on the wheels. There was so much power. It literally, like you were wondering what's going to break because it was so violently powerful.
So you end up the positive to the Prospector, or honestly, the positive to the Ram platform is
AEV.
Is AEV and the interior.
The interior is great. Holy cow. Beautiful.
The cab of the truck.
Yeah, beautiful.
Goes back to 2016,
17, something like that.
If not before that. It's not the same cab. The 5th gen cab on the 1500s so TRX is fantastic.
Yeah.
Why that's not on the HD trucks, hopefully it's coming.
I'm sure it is.
A PXL that's on the new Ram architecture with the proper new cab, which is just, like the current generation HD trucks, like you pull the door out and you pull it by the handle, you kind of see the door move a little bit. Like they're pretty well done, but it was tooled to be cheap to manufacture, and the new stuff is better. So like my next Prospector, see, I'm already saying it. They're good trucks. My next one, I'm going to wait. 5th gen cab. It needs a better transmission, and
you want the high output motor.
And it's not that you need it, but I would want it.
Well, if you're going to have a super truck on 40s, you might as well have
if you're paying
pounds of torque.
Like a Prospector is going to cost you somewhere between $90,000 and $130,000. Okay. That's a lot of money. The AEV upfit, depending if you do just Prospector, you do Prospector XL, starts at like 15 or 20, which is a lot of money, but you can build that into financing, which is really important for a lot of people. And you're not think of the time savings. Like the coolest thing with the Prospector is I got a beautifully built truck from day one.
Yeah.
Everybody knows I've built a lot of vehicles.
And you did nothing to it. I think I remember
the long range tank.
Okay. Yeah. You did essentially nothing to it.
Essentially nothing.
So what was the size of the new long range tank?
52 gallons.
Okay. That's
from Titan.
So maybe 700 mile range.
Like that. Yeah. Just more than you ever need to think about.
Yeah. Sure.
It's there.
What did you do with the spare? Did you go with the bed mount, or you just went with no spare?
I went with the bed mount because that's the way the truck was equipped. I would do it again. I want to say
that's an interesting loss of space, I find. Has anybody done a swing out or anything like that?
Yeah, you can do a swing out. So yeah, maybe that's another negative to the truck is
the spare tire.
There's that's just an inherent problem with a 40-inch tire is there's really nowhere to put it. You can put it on like a rigged swing out, which is what a lot of the PXL guys do. That gives you your full use of the bed. But then when you need to use the bed, you've got this extra step. It's not really that big of a deal.
Sure.
I find it a pain in the ass. So putting it in the bed, it's on the driver's side at the very front of the bed, and it's vertical.
It looks cool, and it doesn't seem to block the view.
You can still fit a dirt bike in the bed because you can run it. Front tire goes in the passenger front of the bed. And to the side.
And yours had a 6.5 foot bed?
6.5 foot bed.
That makes sense.
Dirt bike guy myself, it's really hard to beat the Fords. If you are loading dirt bikes regularly, Ford has this built-in bed step with this handle.
Yeah. And
they have this 6 3/4 bed, which means you can get 2 dirt bikes in with the tires.
Yes.
Or the front tire handlebars are turned inwards. They kind of kiss at the front, and then you have all of this room in the middle. It's actually, that is,
and you can close the tailgate.
And you can close the tailgate.
Yeah.
You can only do that with one bike on the Rams. Where I'm going with that is, even though that tire's there, it didn't really matter because you can only get one bike in there anyways.
Yeah, sure.
I had the rear view camera, like the mirror. I think it's a system from Magna or something. It was an option in the 22s, the clear view system. So it actually had a camera kind of on that third brake light. It was right there.
So then you don't even see the tire.
I only had a little bit of it in the corner,
Yeah.
and you can actually adjust the field of view. So it was very transparent. If you turn that off, you're like, oh wow, I can't see anything out of the truck.
Sure.
That was a really, really worthwhile upgrade, and it made the truck feel and drive smaller and more maneuverable, particularly with the 360 cameras as well. While it was big, and you just, if there's one parking spot and the two people next to you have parked like, you're probably not gonna fit. Now, a lot of that's a mental thing, because the vehicle isn't actually any wider, because while the fenders and the track width increases, it's still the same width at the mirrors.
Sure.
Right. That's a little bit of a mental game that you have to get used to with the truck, but you do think about it because it's big. It's pretty maneuverable. I don't think it's any less maneuverable than a standard 2500. I don't know.
And anything that you do come in contact with, the PXL is going to win.
Yeah. Yeah. It's big. I think you just have to walk into it knowing that it's big.
Yeah.
Like, obviously it's big. Like it's not like, you can't.
They even call it the XL.
Yeah. Like you can't fault an elephant for being big. They're as big of it as an elephant. They're an elephant. A PXL is as big as a PXL.
Yeah. Or as an elephant.
Yeah. So, I did mine had the Warn 16.5 winch on it. Never used it. Looked good, fit good in there. I
think it's a good idea to have it.
I think
like
it's a
the problem is when a prospector gets stuck, you have a real problem.
Yeah.
Because what it takes to get a prospector stuck to begin with means that you are in a place that not much else is going to get to. Mm-hmm. So you really want to have some kind of self-recovery.
I always liked having it around because in the same thing, if the earth roamer gets stuck, we take it pretty far off road usually. That's like the only vehicle that could get it unstuck,
sure,
so to speak. So that was, I guess, one of the thoughts.
So it was your chase vehicle for the earth roamer?
This sounds so terrible. Like, what has happened, man? Like I used to ride scooters in Asia, and I had like $12 to my name, and I think I was happier.
That's usually how it goes.
Yeah. Anyway, so I really enjoyed it. And do I think at the end of the day it's too big? Yeah. Honestly,
I never felt. See, I'll pull back because I think if you're buying a truck like that, you're buying something that has that kind of capability and capacity. So you're saying that I want to be able to have a camper, and I want to be able to go on these really remote trails so I can get further away from all the other people. And that's why you buy, if you're looking at it not as a fashion accessory, which that vehicle does a great job of. Mm-hmm. If you're looking at it just from like how I would want to use it, is if I bought a regular cab, tray bed Prospector on 40s or 41s, it's going to allow me to get to the places that I couldn't get with my AT4. And I would put something like a Scout on top or like they
do get really awkwardly tall.
Yeah. But so does an earth roamer. Yours is almost 12 feet tall.
Yeah.
Once you're into that category, you're going to have a tall vehicle to begin with. But with the shorter wheelbase of the regular cab and the clearance that's provided by the tray bed, you really do end up with this vehicle that is like got Rubicon level capability. Now you're bigger, so you're not going to fit everywhere a Rubicon can go, but you can go so many places that others can't. And I think that's the argument for the Prospector for me as an overlander is if I get a 3500, I have over let's call it 2,800 pounds of payload by the time the conversion's done.
Yep.
I can put any camper I want on there. It'll also take additional fuel and water and whatever supplies I want, front winch, rear winch, whatever I want to install on the vehicle. It can do all of that, and it can get me into places that you just cannot get a Sprinter van. Yeah. You can't get a regular overland vehicle.
I think
that's the argument for me.
The money thing would be to look at that new Rebel. It's kind of like I guess it's parallel to the Power Wagon. it's like the diesel Power Wagon.
Yeah.
But I believe that it's meant to be a little bit more work oriented. That gets the 4-link front end from the Power Wagon with the diesel engine. Doesn't get a front locker like the Power Wagon does, but apparently flexes like.
But you can get a diesel?
You can get a diesel in it.
Wow.
So
what's the name of this?
The Ram HD Rebel. Yeah, it's kind of cool.
I do not know this.
Yeah,
I do know.
So there's PXLs that are starting to come out with those now. And I think that's the new top dog is this like, you get the 4-link from the front end. So Ram HDs get a radius arm setup, which just doesn't flex as well and arguably wouldn't ride as well. So if you really want to talk Cummins equipped Wrangler on steroids, the Rebel HD is real cool.
Okay, I'm seeing what you're talking about here. This thing is very cool.
But the cool thing with AEV is that like if you're listening and you're like, oh, I'm not going to buy a Prospector for whatever reason, and that's fine. You still have access to all of these products.
Accessories.
Like I've kind of been thinking lately, I'm like, boy, like a Ram Rebel with, you can fit 35s on them stock. And to do the AEV bumpers.
And it has a rear locker. One of the things that I think it's important for people to know is don't get hung up on the front locker thing on an HD truck. And I'm just going to be very open here. First of all, these have huge engines. They have 1,000 foot.
So much weight pressing down in those.
And they have 1,000 foot-pounds of torque. So if you have the reason why they don't have a front locker, the Ford doesn't have a front locker, even the Tremor. It has a front limited slip mechanical. The Ram doesn't come with a front locker outside of the Power Wagon, and the Power Wagon has never come with a diesel because if they put 1,000 foot-pounds of torque to a locked front axle, they're going to blow stuff up.
Chassis bind, it's going to go.
It's going to blow everything up. So everybody has to get over this. Full-size HD trucks have to have front lockers. That's not true. They have traction control. So they have these advanced systems that limit wheel spin, but they're controlled they know how much torque is being applied to that front end, and they can adjust it to protect the front differential.
I don't think they need them. I mean, I don't think they need them. So massive, and you're not. I mean, yes, you can take this truck virtually anywhere. I think the use case for a lot of it is going to be mild trails and Forest Service roads with a full-size truck. You get a lot of flotation from the big tires. You get the comfort. You get the load carrying capacity. And another thing I really like about the Rams, I guess I've talked a little bit about maybe some shortcomings they have, shortcomings that are totally fine to live with and not.
Yeah, but
really
we have to be open about it.
Like everybody else in the market in that segment has better options. Anyway, what I love about the Ram is it's actually a small truck. If you get the quad cab with the 6.5 foot bed, what converted me away from the Gladiator was knowing that the dimensions for all intents and purposes were nearly identical. Like we're talking maybe 6 inches in overall vehicle length and nearly, speaking non-Prospector XL, nearly the same vehicle width. I really like them. You get into the Ford, like somebody told me, and I when you kind of stack it up, you see how it's true that a 8-foot bed Ram is nearly the same length as a 6.5 foot bed Ford.
Oh, interesting.
They're a little bit more compact trucks. The engine, I think, comes a little further into the cab. The hood's a little shorter. It's a really nicely thought out package in terms of sizing. They're not as big as you'd think. A lot to like about them. So,
what's the mat spec?
Okay, if I'm building a PXL, let's start with the truck.
Okay.
I don't know if I would do the limited and Longhorn again. I think I would probably just do a Laramie with, I want to say they call it the level 2, because you're spending when you're already spending that much. I think that level 2 package, which is what gets you like the 12-inch screen and the cooled seats and a lot of the technology on the vehicle, it gets you like the dual pane glass, so it's pretty quiet inside. I would get a Laramie with the level 2 package. I would love for it to be a Rebel. I don't know if you can get the Rebel in the 3500. I think that's 2500 only.
Yeah, it looks like it's 2500 only.
Yeah, but that might be enough kind of off-road fun performance for me to want to take that. But realistically, I would choose a 3500. I'd get the high output motor. That comes with the Eisen transmission. I would do the anti-spin rear differential. And then with AEV, I would do the XL pack. I think that the standard Prospector XL package is everything you could ever need. I would argue that you might want the winch. I would argue that you might want the front brush guard. I definitely wanted the lights on the front. I think that they look pretty good. Mine didn't come with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it would be. And that's how I would spec it. I mean, I would ideally love to see what Ram's going to do for 24, but they might just be running this powertrain for a long time. There's rumors of some kind of diesel electric hybrid kind of, from, I've been hearing that for a while. That would be really, really cool. Cause that's the only way that we're really going to get these HD trucks to be practical if they're electrified. Sure. Is some kind of, like,
it's got to be a combination.
Yeah. It's going to end up being something. So that would be my dream. But if I was to build one right now, that 3500 would be the way to go.
Yeah. It'd be 3500 regular cab tray bed. 41,
for you. I would still do the kind of the standard configuration, I'll call it, which a compromise for the mega cab is really that next generation cab that will solve a lot of those problems. It's a little bit longer. It's a little bit more efficient inside. Like the seats end up taking up in the quad cab or crew cab or whatever we're calling it. They end up taking quite a bit of room, right? I don't know. I really enjoyed having this vehicle for a year. I had zero problems on the AEV side. It's cool that they do warranty everything. I had quite a few recalls with the truck. Like I think that Rams for 22 model year, which there's still a lot on dealer lots, they're on stop sale right now. Some heater grid in the intake.
Interesting.
Kind of like a glow plug thing. But yeah, I also had a lot of problems with their infotainment. So for 22, they switched to wireless CarPlay, and half of the time it would crash. They did an update on it. It would still crash. The entire screen would become unresponsive. And the problem is that there's so much controlled through that screen.
All the climate control almost.
You've got some basic buttons on the sides, but you'd have to, constantly reset this screen. And that did fix it. But yeah, I think there's some things that are, again, not on the AEV side, but the Prospector is tied to the truck. Yeah. Most of my journalistic-y complaints would be related to the Ram side.
Well, and speaking of Prospector, it'll be interesting to see if AEV does anything now with the new GM, either the Chevrolet or the GMC on the XL side, because it already looks like a Prospector from the factory. Yeah. So if they did a 40-inch tire package, that would be pretty amazing. If you're
listening to this podcast and you're like, oh man, maybe I want a little bit more modern of a truck. I don't maybe need something that is as large, and maybe I don't want something that is as expensive. I'm going to think there's a lot of people in that boat. That is why this Chevy Silverado HD Bison AEV package. However, I'm not a Chevy guy, but I'm looking at Chevys and I'm like,
I've never been a GM guy, and I
they're listening to the market.
I'm using one. I'm driving a AT4. So.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of public knowledge that there's a little bit of drama with AEV and Jeep and that kind of stuff. Like I think Jeep decided, well, we're going to do this ourselves with Mopar. And it's like, okay, well, when people want to actually spend 5x what these parts cost because they have, Jeep performance parts on them. Let me know. So it's so cool to see Chevy and GM capitalizing on the quality that AEV can provide.
Well, and then look, Jeep just came out with their 20th anniversary Rubicon AEV edition because they finally realized we probably shouldn't
we're gonna be behind in the boat here.
So that new GMC and the new Chevrolet HD, I mean, these are very cool.
They look near perfect. All of the qualms that I had using the Prospector as a daily driver or whatever seem to, in theory, kind of be fixed by this. It's on 35s.
Easily fits 37s.
It's got the great looking, AEV design bumpers,
Multimatic suspension, boron steel skid plates, rear locking differential.
And this boron steel stuff, if you don't know, is it's crazy.
It's crazy.
I think that Matt Felderman from AEV, like they had a regular, like kind of differential skid that was made out of steel. And they had one that was made out of boron steel. Boron steel is like twice as strong, and it's like a billion times lighter.
It is, yeah.
Which, saves your payload.
It does.
So you can put more stuff in it.
So Prospector, very interesting option for overland travelers. I think that we're seeing more and more migration to full-size trucks.
It makes sense.
And vehicles like this just make sense.
I think when you factor in the total cost of ownership on an AEV Prospector XL, early models still sell, bar some examples that have hundreds of thousands of miles, they'll still sell for 60 to 70 grand. Previous generation with 50 to 80,000 miles on them.
Yep.
Those trucks sold for what? Probably like 80 to 90.
Yep.
What would it cost you to actually build a truck like that?
Yeah.
You go to your local four-wheel drive shop, and please support your local four-wheel drive shop. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that they're still going to charge you $150 an hour for labor to do all this stuff, to fabricate this. And AEV kind of has it done.
And it's way more efficient. So I'm sure that their shop rate is similar or maybe even more expensive, but they can do it in half the time because they have a process for it. So they just rip through all these modifications.
Exactly. It's that assembly line kind of mentality.
There's also a snorkel available
There's a snorkel.
which means that it's totally overland ready now. Could you imagine how deep the water would have to be?
Yeah.
So it's literally just for dust.
I don't know if I would do the snorkel. I think the cab's pretty quiet inside. I would value that. I know friends.
It's the overland wave, though.
Friends that did the snorkel, they get some wind noise, and I know that it's like, oh, right, so there's, sir. I'm like, okay, the wind noise is still annoying, and that's just gonna be a factor reality with anything that's cars are so aerodynamically tuned these days.
Sure,
I would.
Those are great insights on the Prospector.
I would buy it again. Would I have a serious look at the Chevy HD Bison thing, the truck that we all know about now? Yeah, I would have a look at that. Yeah. I think the Prospector XL will always be a little more exotic, and I would really it would be very, very tempting to me with an eventual driveline update just to get it into competition with the rest of the market for the truck.
I'm sure Ram will do that.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with what's out there. I mean, we're talking that it only has, torque in the 800s.
Yeah, I know.
Like, let's be real.
I know. Which was unheard of even a decade ago.
Yeah, So,
well, thanks for that, Matt. This is a good conversation.
Yeah,
Check out the Prospector XL. AEV is a good company.
Yeah, we like them.
Yep.
So
we thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.